You would be forgiven if you begin this exploratory deep dive under the impression that this is perhaps among the least exciting of Hell's 9 layers, a misconception bolstered by the surface-level lore that is endlessly regurgitated almost word for word from the same 1 or 2 source books. So let me start off this 2-part lore discovery with a bold claim and a promise. Hell's 2nd layer is the most misunderstood of the infernal realms, its horrors never truly highlighted. Until now. And by the end of this series, we will uncover facets of lore you've never heard before, correct more than one common misconception, and provide insights that will force players, dungeon masters, world builders, and storytellers to view the City of Pain, as well as its archdevil ruler, from an entirely new, fascinating, and dread perspective. This was originally planned as a single video, but the sheer volume of deep lore mined from over months of research left only 2 options: cut some great lore, or extend this into a 2-part series. The good news is 90% of the production work is already done, so there won't be any delay in publishing Part 2, which will be available exactly 1 week following publication of this Part 1. And finally, if you're a fan of the most obscure, even forgotten lore of the 9 Hells, you'll want to stick around for bonus chapters after the credits roll in both Parts 1 and Part 2, where I've compiled a few select deep cuts that fall into the categories of rumor and apocryphal tales. I hope you will join me. I don't think any scholar of infernal lore will be left disappointed. Now prepare for the revelations to follow. When we're done here, the second of Hell's 9 layers will never look the same. Listen up, intrepid explorers. It's time for some brutal honesty. If you are looking to use this deep dive on Dis, or any of the 9 Hells for that matter, as a handy travel guide, then your fate is likely already sealed. Sure, you're still walking, breathing, and perhaps foolishly clutching that holy symbol, but the paperwork on your infernal servitude has already been filed, and the only thing left is the actual processing of your most valuable asset, your soul. Besides, your first question shouldn't be how does one get to Dis, but instead asking yourself by what perfect storm of greed, desperation, or lethal naivete has led you to even consider such a perilous journey to the 9 Hells in the first place. Are you here for its secrets? If the stories are true, Dispater's knowledge archives may hold answers to mysteries found nowhere else. But such knowledge is only rented, never owned, and the interest collected will make you indistinguishable from the very evil you set out to destroy. Are you trying to rescue a loved one? A noble sacrifice to be sure, and one the fiends here will quickly leverage, trading you the soul of your sainted mother or foolish brother for a contract with just enough fine print that damns your entire bloodline. Perhaps you're a sage of infernal studies, convinced your theoretical knowledge of Baatorian jurisprudence will somehow grant you diplomatic immunity. Oh, the fiends here will be thrilled to meet you. I'm sure it's quite rare the subject of a soul extraction conveniently brings their own notes. Or are you simply an ambitious adventurer, convinced that your particular brand of heroic righteousness and exceptionalism will see you through the evils that are to come? My friend, these 9 Hells are a carnival of grifters and snake oil salesmen, waiting to take you for everything you have, starting with your pulse and ending with that delicate soul of yours. I tell you these things not to scare, but to inform. But since you seem hellbound to reach Dis, yes, pun fully intended, I will do my best to inform and prepare you for what is to come. And the first thing you must realize is the 9 Hells does not roll out the red carpet to its lower layers, for anyone. There are no known portals from the material or outland planes that lead directly to Dis or any of the lower layers. Any and all would-be explorers must reach the 2nd layer and beyond the hard way. And this is by design. Asmodeus long ago decreed that Avernus must be the first and only entryway into the 9 Hells. This purpose-built Avernian bottleneck is of course strategic, born primarily from the hard-won lessons of their endless demonic conflict, where every portal is a potential vector for the endless plague of chaos. And by forcing all traffic through the twisted metals and viscera of the Blood War, the Lord of the 9 ensures every arrival is immediately exposed to the frontline defenses of one of the most enduring battles in all the multiverse. The lore hints that other clandestine portals and hidden paths do exist across Avernus, that each lead to the Hells below. They are rumored to be tucked away in places like Bel's Fortress or the ruins of Darkspine. But the most well-known and notorious of these access points are an imposing set of gates framed by a great stone archway called the Gates of Malsperons. For those that can read Infernal, the glowing molten runes above the gates offer its warning to travelers. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Should you ignore the only caution the hells will offer and step beyond those gates, you will find a steep descending road that leads to the Iron City of Dis on Hell's second layer. But access to this dread path to Hell's horrors below is often guarded, not by a legion of devils or some magical wards, but by something far more temperamental: Tiamat, the five-headed goddess of chromatic dragons. A student of the lore may find during their travel preparation some confusion on Tiamat's arrangement with the nine hells, even her exact lair. The texts across editions can be, to put it mildly, inconsistent. Depending upon the doctrines of your chosen lore, Tiamat's location has seen its share of shifts and conflicts, from the dragon spawn pits in Avernus to a plane in the astral sea called Tytherion, the Endless Night. There are even obscure texts of the untheric divinities that claim Tiamat makes her lair in Zigaraxis, a plane located in Acheron of all places. Now, I'm not here to step on anyone's personal dogma, freedom of religion and all. Perhaps the Mother of Evil Dragons has avatars seated across the cosmos, validating each one of these alternative beliefs. However, for the sake of saving you from your own evisceration, trust me when I tell you the truth, as much as that word can apply to a creature of such sinister stature. And that is that Tiamat's primary residence, her true, chromatically evil divine self, has always been right here on Avernus, within eyesight of those gates at the threshold of Dis. Tiamat, long bound by her sworn oath to Asmodeus, is entrusted with restricting access to the Gates of Malsperons. But there is some good news found in the simple fact that the Chromatic Dragon Queen often performs this duty with all the enthusiasm of a DMV clerk. That said, technically, she never fully deserts her post, but I think it would be fair to say that her vigilance in regulating its access wavers, residing nowhere near the top of the Dragon Queen's personal priorities, and there are ample accounts that tell us she is often preoccupied, or dare I say, just lazy in her charged responsibility. All this is to say, if Tiamat doesn't wish to be disturbed, which is most of the time, many a trespasser has been known to quietly slip past undetected. And if all that doesn't work, rumor has it that the Mother of Dragons, and even her Abishai minions that routinely are tasked with standing guard, are not above accepting a worthy bribe. Emphasis on worthy. Assuming you have adequate stealth skills, a big bag of coins, or otherwise did not end up as a Tiamat snack, making your way past the Gates of Malsperons will place you on the descending path into Dis below. This is the Road of Skulls, comprised of the countless pulverized and bleached white skeletal remains and remnants of history's failed invaders into the lower hells. And it is while on this descent that you will begin to grasp why Dis is a geographical paradox, and perhaps outside of Nessus, one of the most misunderstood of the nine hells. And what is likely an experience unlike any other, your journey below will provide a front row seat to a surreal observation of the hostile landscapes of Hell's second layer. Rugged black peaks ring the horizon in every direction, converting this blasted wasteland into a proverbial cage. The air around you transforms from the smoke-congested crimson of Avernus to sulphurous green sky streaked with flickers of lightning and the roar of distant thunder. As you descend this morbid path, you can see the industrial metropolis of Dis below. The Iron City rests upon an island in the center of an immense lake where pernicious vapors rise from its dark waters, fed from the layer's many rivers of chemical poison, converging to form an enormous moat around the city's intimidating black iron outer walls. Looking out beyond the city's boundaries in the farthest reaches of this desolation are the hinterlands, stalked by a variety of fiendish creatures, both known and unknown. On occasion, you can witness one of those unknowns as haunting pillars of stone wander these iron wastes aimlessly like blind and forgotten souls. While their origins and purpose defy any known canonical explanation, strange rumors do persist that we will explore in the bonus chapter at the end of this treatise. Winged Iranese devils native to this lair watch your descent as they patrol the skies with lethal grace. Take a good mental picture of this sinister landscape unfolding during your journey, because it's likely as close as you will ever get to exploring outside the city walls. As you continue your approach to the looming city ahead, suddenly and with little warning, magics not well understood begin to distort your senses and perceptions. Distance and time become unreliable as you abruptly find yourself inside the walls of the Iron City. You wanted to explore the second layer. Well, you're here. You have somehow arrived in a city that is both finite and yet infinite in scale. Welcome to Dis, the most paradoxical of Hell's 9 layers. You now stand in a city with many names. Dis, the Iron City, the City of Pain, the Endless City, and the City that never ends. Whatever name you choose to call it, Dis is considered by most historians to be the largest metropolis in all the 9 hells, although that is not without its own set of contradictions that we will circle back to in Chapter 4. The vast majority of this disorienting industrial cityscape is connected by filthy streets of iron cobblestones, creating a confusing warren of plazas, squares, and squalid slums, along with a myriad of closed iron doors behind which reside unseen flavors of torment, cruelty, and even trade. These brutal architectures extend out to every direction, occasionally broken up by the palatial mansions of those who hold particular sway or influence, usually found in fiendish vassals of Lord Dispater, his inner court, or officers of the Blood War. Yet, even as you try and gather your bearings in this confusing sprawl, not unlike a rat maze, your mind finds no recollection of how exactly you arrived here, or even entered the city in the first place. However, we must table that thought for a time, because in this moment, you're beginning to really understand the gravity of that runic warning above the gates of Malsperons. Looking around, you instantly realize where Dis gets its many names. The urban metropolis before you is a bleak landscape of smoldering iron, its searing heat an unmistakable presence. Every facet of Dis is built from this unrusting metal, not just the towers, buildings, bridges, and streets, but quite literally every tangible object, from the ever-watchful statues to the tables, benches, and even flagons in the taverns. The extent of this all-encompassing iron environment even goes so far in text as to suggest that the falling metallic ash from the city's many industrial machines, workshops, and warforges, along with perhaps Dispater's own cursed energies, creates a metallic-like soil from which grow strange, thorny plants and grotesque trees, all constructed entirely from the hell-forged ore. You may have thought Avernus was uncomfortably warm, but in Dis, the heat eclipses discomfort, landing somewhere between extreme misery and the unbearable to potentially fatal, depending upon which historical writings you're going to trust your life with. Visitors lacking the wisdom to have avoided this place quickly learn that conventional metal armor becomes far more of a hindrance than any help. According to even the mildest of surviving accounts, any mortal not already resistant or immune to fire or holding some form of arcane protections find their organic forms assaulted by torrid heat, comparable to that of a rather well-cast heat metal spell, with any prolonged exposure soon leading to exhaustion, or worse. The streets are so hot, in fact, they can ignite flammable objects, such as those fine silken robes you're wearing. And don't even think about walking around barefoot or in your beach sandals. All this equates to your exquisitely crafted full-plate armor slowly transforming into a kiln for the humanoid roast now beginning to cook inside, a fact most fiends will likely find both pleasing and convenient. Medium rare, please. Leaving your pile of metallic armors and tower shields to smolder in your wake, you will quickly discover that any maps you were scammed into purchasing before this expedition are not only useless, but potentially also actively malicious. Not only is the cityscape in constant flux, some travelers' accounts insist that the very ink on your map may become corrupted, squirming and rearranging to form new lies when you're not looking. There are also frequent tremors within the city, The pragmatic lore suggests this is just shifting due to the constant construction and ever-changing architectures, while more apocryphal tales of the fringe variety warn of immense unseen beasts tunneling below. However, more immediate and tangible threats to your freedom will soon become apparent as you traverse across the city. Chief among these is the warning that non-Baator such as yourself are always at risk of being accosted by the many fiendish factions tasked with policing this urban province at Dispater's direction, each requiring no pretext to subdue, arrest, and imprison. Unfortunately for you, no deportation will follow. Nonetheless, you would do well to quickly learn that the threats found in Dis don't always possess fiendish horns, fangs, venomous blades, or even active violence, instead taking the form in predators who deal in the more subtle evils of pacts and clauses. Dangers found in Faustian contracts signed for a life-saving drink of clean water in a realm that possesses none. Risks from desperate bargains struck to acquire directions when your failed maps leave you hopelessly lost. Even perils hidden deep in seemingly friendly guidance that promptly leads you to a proverbial or literal dead end, where a different kind of price will be extracted. This is the city that watches, and not as a metaphor. The countless iron statues and monuments of Lord Dispater would be right at home in a George Orwell novel, their ruby-red gaze following your every move, the walls of the city always listening. Even the air seems to carry your hushed whispers directly to waiting fiends for transcription. Now, by this point, most wide-eyed and eager explorers have realized the folly of their ways, visibly carrying the fear and regret of their decisions as they seek a quick exit from this hellscape. Tragically, that is a task far easier said than done. I need only remind you of one of the more common sayings of Dis: all paths lead to Dis, but none lead out. I can tell you that due to Dispater's distrust and extreme levels of paranoia, that the Endless City is gripped in what can be best described as an arcane lockdown, powered by the Archdevil's potent wards. That means most planar magic, from the divination of scrying to the conjuration of teleport and plane shift spells, are simply ineffective within the city walls. So how will you escape? Hey man, beats me. I would have never come here in the first place. But until you figure it out, you better get yourself off these streets as soon as possible. For your kind, that means heading to the Petitioners District, a villainous hive of predators, prey, and parasites the locals call the Fetters. I will expand on this outsider's tourist trap along with all of the relevant points of interest here a bit later. But for now, just be warned that in every encounter may lurk a spy, swindler, thief, or cutthroat. Remember, in Dis, the devils are the law, the damned are the currency. And outsiders? Well, outsiders are just fresh souls for the infernal forges. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Hell's second layer is one long debated by scholars and adventurers alike. The lore is often contradictory in describing Dis as both finite and infinite within the same text, a conflict that is of undeniable intent. The city, according to some texts, is said to encompass the entire second layer, its layout paradoxically infinite and yet also suffocating, its streets and neighborhoods extending without end, yet claustrophobic and labyrinthine. You won't need to spend much time here before you learn that Dis is a city constantly being tuned, perpetually rebuilding and reshaping itself to align with Dispater's shifting moods and growing suspicion. And aside from the suffocating heat, the noise is the hardest to ignore. Demolition and construction is ongoing and endless, streets bending like reeds in a storm, each change reflecting the neurosis of its ruler. Chain gangs of lemures, naparibos, petitioners, and even the occasional mortal fuel this misery-driven construction, herded by Spinagon taskmasters, their chains scraping a constant rhythm on the burning iron cobblestones, while winged Irene's devils cut sharp silhouettes against the corrupted jade sky, silent observers to the cruelty below. Streets and city blocks that existed yesterday may be gone today. A tavern in which travelers once took shelter might be demolished, replaced, or even relocated across the cityscape overnight. Guides and maps quickly become useless as the city's configuration alters faster than any cartographer could possibly chart it. Amazingly, these forced work crews seem to accomplish in hours which should take weeks, months, even years, their efforts punctuated by sweat and scream as they remodel and erect new structures, all without relief or protection from the burning iron and suffocating heat. However, the first clue to the sadistic nature of this endless urban planning soon becomes obvious to even the most casual observer. This frantic pace of expansion and remodeling achieves results that no labor force could possibly produce through mundane building practices alone, no matter its size. No, there is undeniable immense magic at play here, infernal powers that most planar scholars firmly believe place Dispater himself as the sinister engine of construction. And it is only when reaching this conclusion that the cruelty of life on Dis is fully clarified, a realization that the relentless toiling by those hell-bound labor crews does not exist due to any necessity, serving exclusively as only a means of punishment. But what exactly does all this even mean, and how do we reconcile assertions of a city that is both finite and infinite, two clear yet diametrically opposed characteristics? Are these claims meant to be taken literal or simply as symbolic? The only real answer is yes. And as maddening as it all may seem, the lore here is actually quite accurate, if a bit on the vague side. To start, the texts are not ambiguous in telling us that outsiders don't travel or arrive to the gates of Dis, as much as they are captured or absorbed by the city. One of the mistakes made by new explorers and planar cartographers who try to study or map Dis begins with a perfectly reasonable attempt to find some demarcation point between the external landscapes of Hell's second layer and the city itself. Because from a practicality standpoint, unlike any other layer of the Nine Hells or perhaps anywhere else in the cosmos, save for maybe the Far Realm, there simply is no distinction. The real truth of the second layer's essential nature lies in the senses and the eye of the beholder, what you can actually see, hear, and touch. And in that context at least, the city of Dis and the external wastes of its landscape are, in any meaningful way, one and the same, a city both finite and infinite. If this is confusing, well, don't feel bad, because that was Dispater's design intent after all. To help visualize and grasp what is clearly a concept devoid of logic for any mind of the material plane and its established laws of reality, let me offer a more relatable meta-analog. Those jagged mountains you can clearly see outside the city walls, gripping the horizon, despite them being quite real, you would be best served to think of them as Shell Beach from the movie Dark City, always out of reach, always in another direction. And the moment you try to breach beyond the city walls, to venture forth outside, you'll inevitably step over some invisible tripwire in Dispater's diabolical matrix code, and find yourself once again standing smack dab in the streets of the Endless City. While not recommended, it must be said that walking the Iron City does offer a first-hand account, where every district, every corner, every dark alley serves as a smoldering component of a perfectly designed maze, an iron tangle intent on keeping all within disoriented, confused, and unsure of their bearings. But we have yet to really answer the burning question: does Hell's second layer physically exist as a land beyond its city walls? Yes, almost certainly. The lore simply provides too many specifics on habitats and points of interest known to reside in the iron wastes of this layer. Massive mines of iron, copper, and zinc ores to be extracted, each powering the most industrious of the Hell's 9 layers. Fortresses and watch posts used to surveil and control all approaches to the city. And the many known fiends, from Gulfir and Wild Irene's devils to hellhounds and Bezakira hellcats that stalk the landscape. There are even the rarest of second-hand accounts passed down by those said to have traveled those external flat iron wastelands, and each almost universally telling of the landscape's spatially anomalous nature, evidenced by unimaginable distances from one peak to another, despite being part of the same mountain range. There are reports of the Iron City's walls seemingly only a mile or two ahead, yet after days of travel, never gaining an inch of ground, even after the use of a teleportation spell. The only mostly agreed upon consensus to navigate the blasted wastes is to follow and adhere to a single road, the very path of skulls that began at the gates of Malsperons in Avernus and is said to wind across the plain. However, despite the certainty of lands beyond the Iron City, so too is the assurance that with only the rarest of exceptions, you will never reach beyond its gates. They are second-hand accounts for a reason, because Dispater says so. Unless, of course, you find yourself being interrogated by a Kokrakon, which I can promise is a path best avoided. The best way to meta-visualize what is undeniably the most disorienting of Hell's many locales is to imagine the shifting, paradoxical cityscapes in the movie Inception, built by the architects from the aforementioned Dark City, all in service of a bureaucracy run by the unseen hands of the endless mysteries found in Kafka's novel, The Castle. So while we have, in this narrator's opinion, technically found our answer, if you have no hope of gaining access, how real can it actually be? And it is in this context that Dis is, in fact, a finite city that is for all intents and purposes infinite. To call the Iron City inhabited is like calling a Dis slaughterhouse a home for stench cows. While it's technically true, it kind of misses the point. Because here's the thing about urban planning in Dis. When you cram 500,000 devils, petitioners, and outsiders into an urban sprawl of heated iron designed by easily the most paranoid of Hell's archfiend rulers, you don't end up with a bustling metropolis of culture and trade, as much as an Orwellian surveillance state spiced heavily with some Dante's Inferno, then visualized by Clive Barker. When a visitor looks out across the grime-coated streets for the first time, where rot grubs feed on the decay of accumulating garbage, and every dark puddle may in fact lurk a black pudding, the most unavoidable and often shocking visual aspect of Dis is found in the immense horde of petitioners crowding every claustrophobic corner of the city. While devils of nearly every rank and form, as well as many outsiders, may call Dis home, make no mistake, its foundation is a society overwhelmingly populated by petitioners. Of all the 9 hells, you will find no other lair that holds even half the number of petitioners condemned to spend their afterlife in endless torment and agony as on Dis. They number in the hundreds of thousands, beings whose mortal sins earned their place here and now are ruthlessly hammered to form the city's underclass. You would be forgiven if you don't fully grasp the fear and revulsion that statement should elicit. In fact, over the years, I've come to learn that most people don't truly understand even what a petitioner actually is, even many that thought they did. Most think a petitioner is a soul, as in the traditional storybook ghostly spirit, a haunting, translucent form of ethereal mist or light. They are most certainly not. Although, to be fair, this all-too-common misunderstanding is not helped by the canonical text that often confusingly uses the term petitioner soul. And it is this stark misconception that really robs the City of Pain of what I would posit ranks as one of its most defining characteristics, an identifying trait unique to Dis that, at least from a visual perspective, arguably places it as the most repulsive and horror-themed of Hell's 9 realms. So let me take a few minutes to provide the abbreviated and high-level explanation of how mortal souls reach the 9 hells and the exact and true nature of a petitioner. To be clear from the outset, this is 100% the afterlife process of 3rd edition, and one that has slowly evolved or devolved, depending upon your preference, to be less, shall we say, visceral. Nonetheless, once you gain the full and accurate measure of the realm unfolding before you, once the mind's eye beholds the truth of not just a petitioner, but hordes numbering in the hundreds of thousands, then, and only then, will you quickly appreciate the true horrors of Dis and instantly recognize the second layer of hell as perhaps the most gruesome of Baator's 9 layers. Infernal afterlife starts when a mortal of the material plane passes away and has met the requirements of having lived a lawful evil life. Their soul will then travel the outer planes to arrive in the 9 hells, always in Avernus, and more specifically, upon the shoals of Despond, a massive blood-red shallow just off the river Styx. Here, the mortal soul will materialize into the form we call a petitioner, no longer holding the aforementioned ghostly form of a spirit or soul traveling the path of its destined afterlife. In the 9 hells, a petitioner actually manifests in a form that is, in many ways, quite similar to their mortal selves, with a few distinct differences. The first notable change is a mind that has been pacified, aligned to their infernal afterlife with the majority of their memories now erased. The lore has hinted that some petitioners may retain remnants of a particularly strong obsession or some fleeting trace strong emotional memory, but even those will fade over time. The second most gruesome difference and key to my argument lies in the physical and visual characteristics of the new petitioner. They are still composed of flesh and blood, but each now visibly retains any and all maladies and injuries they held in life, including and especially all those that just so happen to have been the fatal cause of sending them here in the first place. This means many petitioners arrive in Avernus gravely wounded, disfigured, and/or incapacitated, some even manifesting as unrecognizable forms that would make a lemure look like a solid, no-brainer upgrade. And if you let your mind get spooled up here, it can get very dark very quickly. Imagine a mortal that was shoved off a 10-story building, drawn and quartered, or burned at the stake to begin their afterlife. Not only can each petitioner present some ghastly forms, but they are endlessly varied with almost no two looking alike, each the infernal horror variant of a unique snowflake. How exactly would a dwarven grease spot that fell 10 stories onto a rocky ledge or a drawn and quartered human petitioner now find mobility in the 9 hells? My guess is they would not, likely opting to simply wait in agony, begging to have their soul extracted. But I digress. To close out this hellish intake, each petitioner arrives marked, either physically or by infernal scent. The lore tends to vary here. This mark indicating to which archdevil and lair they are assigned within Hell's hierarchy. Barbazoo devils patrol the shore around the clock, harvesting the petitioners like some form of gruesome crop, stuffing them into cages for delivery and processing. The Archduke presiding over each assigned lair exercises discretion over the petitioner's fate, of which there are 2. Well, actually there are 3, but you'll need to wait until the bonus obscure lore chapter for the 3rd. Nonetheless, this sorting process is closely watched over by a litany of Iranese devils representing their lair and archdevil ruler to ensure there's no stealing or cheating. Now, some archdukes, such as Dispater, routinely choose to keep the most able-bodied in their petitioner forms, while most other devil rulers opt for the immediate soul nectar to be pried from the petitioner through the process known as soul extraction. This actually explains why Dis has far more petitioners on its lair than any other, a trait well supported in the lore, as Lord Dispater prefers subjecting petitioners to his personal brand of torment, found in the form of his chain gangs of eternal construction and demolition. Further, Dispater can afford to keep petitioners while other lairs cannot, because Dis operates at a soul energy surplus, a little-known fact that has everything to do with the 3rd form I just teased and will explain a bit later. For those petitioners set for soul extraction, they arrive at one of the many soul extraction stations across the 9 hells, most often overseen by Omnizoo devils. Inside these bleak machines of grim agony, the petitioner's soul meets the proverbial infernal squeeze. Its energy is drained, leaving behind only a hollow, mindless husk that the lore calls a soul shell. These quivering shells still retain trace soul energy. Remember, infernal afterlife is eternal. The shells are then discarded into the maggot pits of Avernus, where tens of millions of lemures and infernal worms consume and assimilate the remnant shells and, eventually, excrete a new lemure. The cycle of infernal life now complete. Back to the Iron City. As mentioned, Dis maintains the most petitioners of any of the 9 hells. And it may also surprise you to learn that, generally speaking, and notwithstanding whatever fatality they incurred, petitioners are quite able to communicate and often appear almost mortal. While they have almost no memory of their past, and their independent thought is very limited, with motivations centering around their infernal afterlife, They are far from mindless and retain a basic, if dulled, level of human-like intelligence. In fact, Dispater will often put the most attractive and able-bodied petitioners in service to his ranking vassal fiends as servants, craftsmen, or even entertainers. Others may run shops or taverns in the fetters, where the petitioner is quite capable of interacting with a customer. But those are the lucky ones. I just told you how they retain many of their mortal traits as petitioners. This includes the ability to feel pain, bleed, and be subject to grave injury, over and over. They just cannot rest in peace, ever. And the vast majority of petitioners, hundreds of thousands in fact, are the source of constant wailing, their agonized screams assaulting your ears as they tear down a freshly built, glowing hot iron structure with their bare, burning hands, only to be ordered to rebuild it moments later. They have humanoid traits, but they are no longer individuals, just a simmering mass of regret, bitterness, and constant pain. Alongside the throngs of petitioners are the fiendish bottom feeders of Dis, taking the form of Lemure and Nuparibo least devils, equally punished and tormented however the mood of Lord Dispater strikes. But in these hells, someone has to crack the whip. Enter the Spinagons or Spine Devils. As mentioned in the last chapter, these sadistic flying taskmasters, with their equally cruel imp assistants tagging along, oversee the city's endless and needless construction and demolition. When not supervising the forced demolition crews, you can find them hawking defective goods in the city's black markets, or otherwise generally making life miserable for anyone unfortunate enough to rank below them in Hell's lawful evil hierarchy, which, given their own position near the bottom, means they often take out their frustrations on the amorphous blobs under their command with ruthless enthusiasm. But this is also teeming with a diverse variety of additional denizen devils, not the least of which are Tiamat's own unique brand of fiend, the Abishai, which are often found playing the role of neighborhood watch. They perch and preen along iron walls like draconic gargoyles, gathering intel they can report back to the mother of chromatic dragons. Less common but certainly present are barbed Hamatula and bearded Barbazoo devils. Each typically perform various guard duties, from Hamatulas protecting sensitive areas and access points such as portals, while the Barbazoo are found almost exclusively working as jailers or guards in Mentiri, Dis's massive underground prison. Among the more rare of Batazoo devils, one may also catch the horrifying gaze of a Palirion devil. Dis, well known for its vast network of spies and agents, will see these obese parodies of seduction, spy masters in their own right, working some covert angle or perhaps fulfilling a role at the behest of Dispater's inner court. On the military front, garrisoned in Dis, you will also find the Iron Defenders, an army of devils specializing in engineering, defensive maneuvers, and siege breaking, both for the Blood War and, of course, Dispater's always evolving self-defense strategies. In the classical lore of the 2nd edition, the Iron Defenders were led by the Dark 8 pit fiend Zappin, although it is unclear if that is still the case in the more modern chronicles. Pit fiends are exceptionally rare on Dis, found mainly as commanders to various armed legions stationed here, or those in service to Dispater's personal armed force and bodyguard, known as the Iron Guard, where they lead companies of Cornigon, Malabranch, and Warder devils. Additionally, the Iron City is home to countless Maragon Legion devils. While on the counterintelligence front, Dis employs over 1,000 of Dispater's preferred inquisitors, the insect-like Kokrakons, who excel in the art and science of information extraction at the School of Pain. But if you want to see those devils who curry the most favor with Dispater, all you have to do is look up. The Irenes patrol the toxic emerald skies as messengers, aerial scouts, and an elite winged police force, bringing word of any intruders or unrest directly to their lord. Favored for their beauty, competence, and loyalty, Dispater utilizes his most prized Irenes, who fly to and from the heights of his iron tower just as one of many manifestations of the Iron Duke's eyes and ears. Turning to the non-Batazoo, curiously, Rakshasas are known to often travel to and even call Dis home. In the 1st edition lore specifically, Rakshasas were said to have embedded themselves into the service of certain dukes, where they filled the roles of advisors and envoys. The devious fiends of the material plane are certainly valued for their strong sorcery and illusion magics, as well as their ability to provide an exceptional outsider's perspective. However, many devils of the Nine Hells have come to distrust their fierce independence. Another unusual find in the City of Pain are night hags who routinely travel the Nine Hells. They can on occasion be found slinking through the black markets and back alleys of the Petitioners district, trading for soul larvae or arcane reagents as they pass through. There do exist a small number of living mortal races who also reside in Dis. These include warlocks, necromancers, and other diabolists who bargained their way into some form of infernal service, as well as sinister scholars and sages seeking forbidden knowledge, and even the occasional for-hire mercenaries and assassins. Besides those groups of intentional visitors, there are others that reside here in precarious positions and often not by any choice of their own. Usually plainer scholars who took that wrong turn and ended up here by one circumstance or another, from foolish heroism or lustful ambition to the wayward magic of incompetent spellcasters. Regardless of their means, they are here now. Hey, kind of like you. Unlike you, however, they have been bought, sold, or otherwise placed into various forms of servitude. Of the more mundane variety are traders and shopkeepers of the city's numerous markets and bazaars. Others include scribes, artisans, and craftsmen favored by a particular greater devil. These mortals can be of any race, although due to the oppressive heat in Dis, those most likely to survive include tieflings, cambions, and certain dragonborn and genasi, although the rare human, elf, or dwarf is not out of the question. However, any mortal in Dis is essentially living on borrowed time. Either they outlive their usefulness and are killed, or they fall from grace to become another petitioner of the city, something you would do well to keep in mind the longer you remain on a layer that takes a dim view on any mortal with any freedom. As we close our initial descent into the Iron City, you'll be forgiven for entering this deep dive with the mortal mindset of a hell filled with fire and brimstone. While heat is never in short supply in Dis, you'll need to travel down 2 more layers to Phlegethos for that more stereotypical environment. No, the true damnation you will find on Hell's second layer isn't the heat on your skin, but the eyes on your back. This is first and foremost a surveillance state, a constantly shifting rat maze of heated black iron laced with the paranoia and distrust of its ruler. But don't get too comfortable, this was only Hell's orientation. In Part 2, we will scale the monolithic iron tower to confront the architect of all this paranoia, the Iron Duke Dispater himself. We will unmask his inner court, chart his industries of war and soul forging, explore forgotten points of interest, and whisper some obscure rumors that even devils fear not speak aloud. My aim with this exhaustive 2-part deep dive was to bring something you may have never known before. Did I succeed, or did I miss something? Be sure to let me know in the comments. I read them all and respond to most. And if you appreciate this level of classified intelligence and lore, signal your approval with a like and join an amazing lore community by subscribing and enabling notifications. For access to the Inner Circle archives of this channel, including HD art packs from across all of my lore videos, as well as world-building resources, maybe check out my Patreon. Links below. Thank you to my Patreon and channel subscribers who make these deep dives possible, and thank you for watching. Until next time, take care, my friends. As a thank you for sticking around to the end of Part 1 of this deep dive, I have broken past infernal bedrock to go even deeper to research or otherwise mine some apocryphal tales, obscure lore, and infernal rumors. And yes, even those of you that skip straight here can stay. I mean, I put the chapter markers in, so I guess it's just as much my fault as yours, right? Quick disclosure, while each of these are based in various amounts of canonical lore, ranging from significant to barely a seed, I am sharing them because I find each fascinating and think they might help with future campaigns or world building. But to avoid any confusion or debate, I present these as non-canon. You do with that what you will. Infernal Studies 101 will tell us that in the Hells, failure is never taken lightly. And first up, we have the rumored fate of a fiend named Krieg, a tale told to ambitious fiends as warning. Kriek was a pit fiend general, said to have had ties to the Dark Eight, but that dared plot against Dispater. As punishment, the lore specifically tells us that Dispater, quote, stripped him of his station, if not his form, end quote. While the lore is vague on his exact fate, it is the last part of that quote that I want to focus on for a moment. You might recall all the way back in Chapter 2 as you were descending from Avernus down the road of crushed skulls that you might witness haunting pillars of stone, wandering aimlessly like blind forgotten souls. It is from the words, if not his form, that rumors have long persisted that Kriek's soul is forever entombed among other betrayers, each embodying those restless, wandering pillars. Our number 2 rumor is one that has circulated for some time and is about as close to canonical as a rumor can actually get. While just researching the source materials across editions will not provide concrete confirmation, only hints, Chris Perkins from WotC has confirmed on the record as early as 2018 that the demon lord Grost was once a devil of the 9 hells. Feeling underrepresented and overlooked, the Batazu turned Tanari defected to the Abyss to carve out his own domain as a demon lord. Obscure? Yes, but now canonical lore as far as I'm concerned, so we need to dig a little deeper. The lore offers nothing but ambiguity on the details of which archdevil Grost actually served. The canonical text often just lists Asmodeus, which some scholars take in the most literal sense. However, there is a case to be made for others such as myself who take this to be a more general or categorical phrasing, as in all devils, including the archdevil rulers of the 8 layers above Nessus, each serve Asmodeus. And it is within that latter group where we find a growing number of scholars who posit that Grost may have actually served as a devil viceroy to Dis before his defection to the endless chaotic depths of the Abyss. For my final offering in this part 1 of some truly fascinating and obscure lore, we turn to the secret of soul extraction that is very unique to Dis. The lore of the 3rd edition, specifically the Fiendish Codex II, tells of an anomaly that will, on rare occasion, see a soul arrive to its afterlife in the 9 hells, taking an unexpected form. Hopefully you paid attention in Chapter 5 where I explained the intake process of hell, and you now understand that petitioners which arrive upon the shores of the river Styx to begin their afterlife no longer hold the form of a spirit or soul. However, these unique souls actually do arrive, or perhaps just retain their form, as a specter or shade, an anomalous state that has come to be known as anagnoresis. This highly unusual incident seems to occur when that mortal soul realizes and then attempts to truly repent their misdeeds, presumably at just the precise moment meeting some unknown 1 in a million threshold, an event horizon if you will. And while this most sincere action of repenting still occurs a fraction of an instant too late for any hope of salvation, through some cosmic flaw or bug in the lawful code, these souls do retain both a spectral form and, more important to our obscure lore, their full intact memories as well. Now, why this matters has everything to do with, of course, soul energy. Due to this glitch and retention of memories, these unique specters now understand their victim's pain and the consequences of their past evil. Remember, they truly did repent right at the moment of death, no posers allowed, so they arrive into Avernus as a shade that now forever laments its sins. For the 9 hells, or at least Lord Dispater and the 2nd layer of hell, these souls are an economic windfall, because for all intents and purposes, each are a renewable source of soul energy. Unlike the normal process of soul extraction, which is, generally speaking, a one-time harvest, Dispater has discovered how to siphon soul energy from these weeping shades. The soul energy is collected by metal rods erected and visible on the many towers and bridges all across Dis, only to see it restored as the agonized spirit eternally wails in recalling its greatest regrets and sins, becoming the diabolical version of a rechargeable soul battery. Since only Dispater holds the secret of this renewable siphoning of anagnoresis spirits, it has become common practice for other archdevils to trade such shades to Dispater for a haul of normal petitioners, but that does not mean it will always be this way. While the process is said to be known only to Dispater and perhaps his consort Lilith, it is one of the most coveted secrets of the Nine Hells by other archdukes, who routinely send spies to Dis in an attempt to steal the knowledge. Yet another priceless treasure likely awaiting whoever manages to infiltrate the Iron Tower. For a quick bit of interesting meta lore to this final secret of Dis, some of you might be curious about the word anagnoresis. If so, let me share the Oxford definition and etymology of the word, which I find to be highly creative and a thematically appropriate application of the word to these specters of Dis. Anagnoresis is of Greek origin, attributed to Aristotle and later generalized to mean to come to know. The Oxford definition is the point in the plot, especially of a tragedy, at which the protagonist recognizes his or her or some other character's true identity or discovers the true nature of his or her situation. So my hat's off to Robin Laws and Robert Schwab, co-writers of the Fiendish Codex 2. Well done, and just another in a long line of examples why I so enjoy the lore of 3rd edition, along with 2e, far above all else. And with that, part 1 is a wrap. I hope to see you in part 2.